Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is Mindy Eggen, and today I'm going to show you how I created this super adorable Easter card and also how to create your own custom shimmer ink. So first I want to show you some of the supplies I'll be using today. I'm just using one stamp set, and that is the Extra Amazing Easter stamp set. I'll be using the Sunburst backdrop, straight flower border die, which is at the top, the grassy border. I'll also use the large stitched rectangles, and I'll be using the largest one out of that set. Everyday Sentiment banner die. The small stitched circle, and I'm using the second smallest one. So I don't often show this step, but I did want to include it in today's video in case any of you are unfamiliar with it. But to stamp my images, I loaded them into my Mindy tool, or you can use an acrylic block, and I'm going to stamp them using the Fawn jet black ink onto some white cardstock. This is the Fawn white cardstock, which is 80 pounds. To clean my stamps once I'm done stamping, I'm going to use the stamp chamois that I keep in this cute little case. So this is damp, and I just keep it off on the side while I'm stamping, and I'm just wiping that over the stamps to clean them off. Then I'll move on to Copic coloring my images. I will have all of the colors I'm using listed at the top of the screen like I usually do for reference. Starting with the bunnies, I'm going to be using E43, 42, 41, and 40. I'm keeping the highlight area kind of down the center of the bunny, so I have the shadow areas on each side of the head, kind of on the tops of the arms, and then on the very inside of the belly and a little bit to the inside of the legs. Then just going through the colors that I've picked, I'm going to blend those out. So the darkest areas will be on the side of the head, kind of showing like there's light coming from both sides of the bunny. Now on this one, I have the darker area to the left side because the bunny looks like it's facing the right. So to me, that's where a light source would be. So my darker area will be on the left. Once again, just going through darkest to lightest, applying those colors and then blending them out. For the ears, I'm going to use R32 and R30. And for the belly, I'm going to use W2 and W0. So keeping it just a really light color combination. So I'm going to apply those same two color sets to my second bunny. And then I will be taking the R32 and I'm going to add that to the nose. And I'm also going to add some cute little rosy cheeks to my bunnies. Then for my cute little chicks, I'm using Y19, Y15, and Y11. And I'm just looking at which direction they're facing. So whatever direction they're facing is going to be my lightest area. Then I'm just using an YR14 to add to the feet and the beak. And I think it was the R32 that I added to the top of the head. Now for my Easter basket, I'm using the E37, E35, E33, and 31. Darkest color to the very outside and just a little bit on the bottom. So I will have the highlight area in the middle. And then I take my E37 and I just go over those basket lines to kind of just add a little character and contrast to my basket. I'm not going to color the handle of the basket because I'm actually going to be cutting that off later. And then I'm going to color in the top part of the basket there with the BG11. To color in the Easter eggs here, I'm just using some of the colors that I already have on my desk. So the yellows I already had out from my chicks, and then I had the R32 and R30. I just grabbed a couple of the orange markers, and then my BG, I think it was 45 and 11 for the blue. So I just kind of randomly grab and hope they work out. Then I'm going to take the coordinating dies and hold them in place with some low tack tape, and I'm going to die cut out my images and set them off on the side to work on the rest of my card. Starting with this Sunburst backdrop die. Now this is a really great die to use on its own. You can color it up or use with the Magic Iris, but I'm going to use it just on white cardstock today. So this is cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Lining that up over the top of my backdrop, and I'm going to hold this in place on one end with some low tack tape. Then I'm going to take my small stitched circles, and I'm using the second smallest one. It's a little bit bigger than the opening, which is what I want, and I'm going to die cut it out of some of the yellow shimmer cardstock. I used a lot of shimmer cardstock today, and they were out of either the pastel or the tropical packs. Here is the straight flower border die. So you're getting the border and you also get those 3 small pieces towards the top of the screen. And I'm die cutting this out of the light green shimmer cardstock. I'm lining it up towards the top. That way I can always trim off excess if I need to. I'd rather have more room to work with than cutting it too short. So I'll line that up, hold it in place with tape so that it doesn't shift and it die cuts out straight. I'm also going to die cut out the flowers out of some of those pastel colors in the shimmer cardstock pack. And then taking another piece of the green shimmer cardstock and die cutting a grassy border. I wanted to add another layer to my card. Even though that flower border looks really cute, I'm going to have another layer here just to kind of add a little dimension to the card. Now that I have all of these pieces cut, I'm going to start working on putting together my flower border. So I have yellow cut, which is kind of that solid piece there. That is what the middle of our flower, or it's for the middle of our flowers. So I'm flipping my border die over, or my piece that I die cut from the border die, and I'm adding liquid glue to the back of those flowers that have the center missing. So we're going to put the yellow cardstock on those, and if I have too much liquid glue back there, I just dab it off with my fingers. And then I'm going to flip that over so you see it's the yellow centers. And then I'm going to add the blue flowers on top of that. So once again, just adding a little bit of that liquid glue. I always joke that I don't wear blue jeans, I wear glue jeans because that's where I wipe all of my excess glue. I have a pair of jeans just strictly for when I'm crafting. After I have all of my flowers added to my flower border, I'm going to add this to the front of the card. I wanted this to kind of layer over the sun that I created on my background. So I'm going to first actually adhere that yellow circle that we die cut earlier out of the stitched circles. Now there's a couple ways you can do this. I did it with tape runner and I actually kind of overwent in the area. I have a lot of extra tape runner around there, but it rubs off really easy. So I just rubbed off all of that excess and you can see it kind of gums up, but it didn't leave any marks behind. And then once I have that down, I'm adding tape runner to the bottom of my card, which I had trimmed down. I don't remember the exact measurement right here offhand, so I'll be sure to put that at the top of the screen for you. But I added that adhesive towards the bottom and then also on the top or towards the top of my flower border. That way I can customize this. I don't have to worry about measuring my line border. And I'm going to take this over to my paper trimmer and I'm going to trim off all of that excess. Now I didn't want to add my grassy border just yet because I didn't want to add too many layers of cardstock to this. So I'm just starting with this piece here and trimming off that excess. Once I have that trimmed down, I'm going to be adding the grassy border, but first when I was lining it up, it looked just a little too plain. So I decided to add a little bit of color to this using an ink blending brush. And I started with freshly cut grass and decided that just wasn't quite dark enough for me. So then I grabbed my jalapeño ink from Fawn and just blended that on just to add a little contrast between the two backgrounds. So here's that jalapeno, just kind of darkens it up a little bit, and it ink blends fine over that shimmer cardstock. So once I have that done, I'll add adhesive to the bottom of my card and the top of my grassy border. That way it's attached no matter what part I cut off. Kind of layer that down, and then I'll take that over to my paper trimmer again and trim off that excess. Now, one idea I had, and I completely forgot to try it before I added everything, was adding some speckles to my background. And this was really cool and very magical. I just smooshed down in a craft mat there some sunflower ink from Fawn, and I'm adding a drop of the liquid stardust. And then you just mix that together and it creates the most beautiful shimmery ink. Try this with any of the colors. It is absolutely gorgeous. Now you can see here, I just have some copy paper protecting the bottom of my card and also just kind of a white piece of cardstock there protecting my sun area. And then just tapping my paintbrush and adding those little flicks all over the place. Try this with any of your color of ink pads, just smushing it on a craft mat and mixing it with that liquid stardust. You're going to love it. This is going to take just a few minutes to dry. I'm going to give you a close-up look here of what this looks like on the background. And it's just beautiful, shimmery goodness. I love it. So I'm putting this off on the side and I'm going to work on the rest of my card. I'm starting with the Perfectly Plaid 6x6 paper pad. Now, how many of you are super excited about this paper pack? I love all of these plaid backgrounds. So I just flipped through and picked one that kind of matched my background that I had done, something really springy. Then I'm going to die cut this using the large stitched rectangle, and I'm using the largest one out of this. Now you don't have to do this. This is kind of an extra step. You could just trim it out because it measures 4¼ by 5½, but I really like the stitching on it. Then this is just another piece of white cardstock that I'm adding to the middle. It's going to be a nice border around my designed panel that I have here, and that white panel measures 3¾ by 5 inches. I'm still waiting for everything to dry, so I decided to make a card base and actually put a sentiment to the inside. So this is going to be measuring, this is top folding, and this is a 4¼ by 5½ inch card that it's going to be, so an A2 size card. And I went ahead and attached my plaid background to that. Now I'm going to open this back up and I'm going to place it in my Misty tool, and I'm going to be stamping this really cute punny sentiment in here. And this is off of the Extra Amazing Easter stamp set. I'm using my Misty corner to just push that sentiment up and make sure that it is lined up straight. You just need to make sure that it's even margins on each side. But at least with the Misty corner, it's going to make sure that the sentiment is straight in the inside. And I'm stamping that in the guava ink. The reason I stamped it in guava ink is I'm going to be heat embossing on guava cardstock. This is a sentiment that's going on the front of my card. So I lined up the Happy Easter, picked it up with the door and the Misty, and I prepped my cardstock with an anti-static powder tool. Then I'm stamping this in the clear embossing ink, and I'm going to sprinkle on white embossing powder and just tapping off any excess back into my container. And then I'll melt this with my heat gun. And I don't know what it is, but my heat embossing looks great the first time, every time when I'm stamping and heat embossing with Lawn Fawn products. It's like they have magic in their products. I don't know what it is. I'm then die cutting this sentiment using the Everyday Sentiment banner, holding that in place with that low tack tape. And then I'm going to take this out once I die cut it, and I'm shifting this down so I can have that banner be at the other end, so it'll be even on both sides. Now I want to add a little bit of dimension behind my front panel, and I know a lot of people love to use foam tape, and you can totally do that if you want. I like to use cardstock. It just, to me, provides even coverage behind my front panel. I don't have any places kind of dipping from where the foam tape was. I just really like adding cardstock, and it's a great way to use up scraps if you have maybe a background you didn't like or some coloring that didn't work out. It's a great way to use up your scraps too, instead of just throwing those pieces of cardstock out. So I went ahead and attached that to the front of my card, and now I'm going to start working on just putting everything together. You can see I had trimmed off the handle of that basket. I think it's really cute, but it was just with the card and my flower border in the background, the basket handle was just a little bit too high for me. And now it's just a matter of where do I want my images to go. I really like this one that's forward facing with the arms up in the air, so I put that one in the middle, kind of grabs your attention. And then the rest of my elements are going just around that bunny in the front of the card. So the basket I adhered and that bunny I adhered with the tape runner. One of the chicks I added with a tape runner, just kind of making it look like it's more in the background. And then my one bunny here in the front and another little chick is going to have some foam squares behind it. I also added white foam squares behind my banner and just added that to the top of the card. And I'm bringing in a white jelly roll pen, and I'm adding just little shine marks to the tops of my eggs. I think this kind of helps make it look like the eggs are round. You know, sometimes with smaller images and the coloring, you don't always get that kind of round feeling. So I think using those shine marks kind of really helped that. And there we have it. I'm super happy with how this turned out. I really needed this. This felt so good to create. And I think it's just an adorable Easter card that you could also turn into a birthday card if you really wanted to. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and really give that trick a try by creating your own kind of shimmer colors with using your inks. I think you're really going to love that. Thanks so much for joining, and I'll see you again next time.